Hi, welcome to today's Training Tuesday. My name is Kelsey and I am a trainer with the Broadlean Business Management Software. And I'm excited today we are going to be talking about all things installation. I'll go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. So I am here in the master menu. And what we're going to start with is adding and editing installers. And that's done in number 5 here, installation system. Then I'm going to go to installer maintenance number 4. And I'm brought to this screen. From this screen, I can both add or edit installers. If I want to add an installer, I would simply come right up here, type in the installer ID that I'd like to use for this installer. I will just use myself as an example. And I would go ahead and hit add. If I want to edit an installer, I'm going to come down here, click on the installer's name, right click, and I can hit edit. I'll go ahead and hit edit and I'm brought to this page. This is the exact same page that you're brought to as well when you're adding an installer. And when you're adding an installer, you will need to go ahead and fill as much information out as you have about this installer. For example, you have your basic contact information here. You can see that there is a spot for name and contact. That's because if you have like a business name for maybe an install crew, you'd go ahead and use that for the name. And then you'd go ahead and put the specific contact person's name here in the contact spot. A few other things I want to point out. You do have a spot here for specialty. This is just for internal purposes only, but it can be really helpful if you maybe have salespeople that aren't as familiar with what all of your installers do. It can be a great tool to help them understand, any specialties that this installer might have. If I have an installer that maybe only wants to do a certain number of installs per day, I could go ahead and put a max number of installs per day here, and then I'm going to be flagged when I try to schedule them for more than that max. If I have an installer whose first language is not English, I can actually go ahead and select a different language here, for example, Spanish. And then if I click this button, it's automatically going to print any work orders for this installer in Spanish. When you're setting up an installer, you'll want to make sure you select the type of installer for pay purposes. And then you have a few things down here. If you're ever taking out a loan or allowing your installer to take out a loan from you, you go ahead and put that in here. If you're taking out retainage from their pay, you can set that up right here. You can set up the retainage percentage here. And you can also see that you'll have a limit. You have a spot for workman's comp. If you're taking any amount out of their pay, you can set up the percentage you're taking out here. Same thing with liability. Even if you're not taking anything out of your installer's pay, you can still put in the expiration date of those licenses here. And I highly recommend doing this because when these licenses are expired, you're actually going to be flagged in your system when you go to pay this installer. So it's a good reminder for you that, hey, I need to get this updated information on this installer. You also have the ability that if you are taking out of their pay, you only will do that when this license is expired. You have a few places here for installers that have maybe a time and a half or trip charges that relate to their pay. You can fill that out here. You also have these spots down here, 1, 2, and 3, where you can actually keep track of any other additional licensing or insurance that you may want to. For example, I've done driver's license here. If you want to take out of their pay, again, you can set up the percentage that you're taking out right here. And just like in these spots above here, you can also use these to keep track of when these are expired. And you can also see you have these buttons here. So again, you maybe only want to charge when that expiration date has passed. You can also choose to disallow work orders when this expiration date has passed. So for example, maybe I don't want to allow this installer to do any installs once his driver's license is expired. I'd go ahead and click that button there. Another thing to note on this screen is this button up here, restrict installation by accumulator. So if you come in here, let's say that this install crew doesn't do tile. I could double click this to either activate or deactivate it. That way it's not going to allow me to schedule Bob's flooring install for tile jobs. You also have a spot for some green notes in here. So just internal notes, anything that you want to keep on hand that will always live in this installer's account. And that is how you go about adding or editing installers. I'm back at the master menu, and I'm going to go into sales processing and order entry maintenance, select my printer, and I'm going to open up the job that I'm ready to schedule the installation for. For this example, I'm going to use this job. And you can see on this job, I have a combination of material and labor items. And one thing I want to point out about these labor items is you see there's quite a few of them. These labor items, however, are divided into two types. A principal or primary install item, and then a related item or a secondary item. So what I mean by that is this is a primary item, so stretch in carpet. And then this is a secondary, dispose of carpet. What I mean by this too is that this here is kind of the reason the install is happening. And this is just something that is going along with that. So this is something that is likely to be scheduled on its own. And this is something that will probably never really be scheduled on its own. It's always going to be scheduled with another primary install item. Here's another example of that down here. I have my install hardwood, and then that is my primary install item. And then my floor prep, my appliance moving, delivery, that all accompanies this primary item. The reason this is important is because when I am ready to go ahead and schedule the installation for this job, I'm going to come over here to install dates. And you'll notice, again, I have several labor lines here. When I come over to install dates, you'll see that I have the ability to schedule just the primary items. When I go ahead and get those scheduled, then I can also relate those secondary install items to this. And that is all done through something called accumulator codes. So if you can see here, my primary items both have accumulator codes. And you can tell by double clicking and coming down to the bottom right, and you see accumulator code. Let's say that I do want to go ahead and schedule something else separately. I want to make something else a primary install item. I'm going to say maybe the delivery here. I can simply come in here and give it an accumulator code. I'll say that this is going to fit into the miscellaneous category. These categories can be edited. Now I'll come over to install dates, and you'll see I am able to schedule delivery and acclimation separately. Let's go ahead and get these scheduled. I'm going to schedule the delivery first. I could go ahead and hit add here if I want to schedule these categories individually, or if I want to schedule them all together, I could go to schedule multiple items to schedule them all together for the same time. In this case, I'm going to schedule them separately. I'm going to schedule my delivery for the 10th, for the first thing in the morning, with my installer, Bob. And I'll hit continue. And then again, you can see these related items. So the related items are going to contain any materials. So you want to select any materials that will have to do with this install line, as well as any of those secondary install items. So those secondary labor lines. So in this case, this is a delivery. I'm going to schedule all of my materials, and to select them, I'm just going to simply double click them, and you'll see that they get a Y over here when they're selected. And I'll go ahead and hit save. You can now see I have this selected. This is the installation date, and these are the related items. If I need to edit or delete this, I can simply click here, right click, and either edit or delete right from here. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the hardwood scheduled. Again, I'll go ahead and hit add. I'm going to select my date range. I'll say this is happening later in the week and into early next week. And you will notice that because it is a big range, I do have the ability to include Saturday and Sunday. I'll say for this example, my installation team is going to work on Saturday. So I'll go ahead and check this box. I will grab, again, my installer by clicking on that button and double clicking my installer. You can see here that I do have the quantity is 500. That's coming right over from my job. If for some reason I only wanted to schedule half of this, maybe the other half was being installed at a later time, I could simply come in here and freehand type as much of the quantity as I need to. And then I'll go ahead and hit continue. You'll see that when I have multiple days selected for the installation, my system is going to break down those days. It's going to roughly estimate how much quantity is going to be being installed on those days. And then it's also going to give you the ability to unselect any days in that time range that you selected. So for example, let's say that my install crew is not going to work Friday. I can simply come over here and double click. And now Friday is unselected. So they are only scheduled for these days. That does not include Friday. I'll go ahead and hit continue. And again, I'm asked about related items. And I can go ahead and use related items for more than one labor line. So for example, I'm going to use my material again. So even though my material was related to my delivery, it's also going to be related to this installation. So I'm just double clicking here. I'm also going to include my floor prep labor line and my appliance moving. And I'll go ahead and save. Again, you can see I have this selected here, my dates down here, and my related items here. This time, if I were to come in and want to delete all of these dates, I'd want to make sure I right click and go to delete all dates instead of deleting them individually. Lastly, I want to go ahead and schedule my carpet. I'll come up here. I'll say I'm going to schedule my carpet for early next week. It's going to happen all day long, so I'm not going to designate a time. I'm again going to select Bob, the full amount, and go to continue. And I'm going to relate my carpet, my pad, and the disposal of the carpet, and then save. Now this job is all scheduled. A few things to note after you've scheduled the job. I'm going to get back into my sales processing screen here. You can now see that my beginning installation date is added over here. I could use this column header to sort these out by installation date if I wanted to. Another thing you can do is come up here to filters and filter by installation date. So if I come down here and go to install date, I can go ahead and plug in a time frame. Let's say I want to see everything that's happening for the month of June. I'll go ahead and put that date range in, and I'll go ahead and hit add filter and then filter it. So I can now see all of my jobs that are happening in the month of June. I can also come up here now that I have my date range selected and go to view installation schedule. And this is going to give me some really nice insights about what I have happening for installations in the month of June. You can see it's going to list all of my jobs. It's going to give me a quick rundown of what's happening on those jobs. You can see down here, I can see my total quantities for the month. So this is everything I have going for carpet for the month for the different categories of materials. You can see that broken down below. And if I come up here, I can also break this down by those categories. Let's say I only want to view carpet. I can simply do that. If I want to grab one of these lines and find some more information out about what's going on with the installation, I can simply click it and you'll see more information appears down here. If you're not using the web calendar, I do highly recommend it. It's one of my personal favorite things about our system. I'll go ahead and get signed in so you can see what that looks like. This web calendar is going to allow you to keep track of all of your installations by your individual installers. So once you get into your web dashboard, you'll simply come over here to install calendar. And it's going to load your install calendar by your dates, and it'll also again break it down by the individual installers. So it's really easy for you to simply come in here and get a quick view of everything going on. So again, I have my time period selected here. So I have the week of June 9th through the 15th. And there's all kinds of really great filters you can use in here to help break the view of your calendar down a little bit more. I don't have any filters on here currently. I'm going to see all of my installers here on the left, and you'll see my dates are up here on the right. And then you're going to see all of the jobs I have scheduled for this week. You're going to notice they are color coordinated by the type of installation it is. So, wood is blue, the green is the miscellaneous, the red is the carpet, and so forth. You'll also notice that if I hover over these, it's going to highlight everything that is going on with this job. So even though this is expanding over 3 days, when I hover over it, I can see that this is all one big installation on one job here. If I want to find more information on these, I can simply go up here and look at a little bit of information in the black square above, or I can click on it to get full details on the job. So that can be extremely helpful in helping to schedule your installations. If you're still using old school pen and paper, this truly can replace that old method of doing your installations. And it's really great because your installers and your sales staff can all see this exact same screen. Now install day is here, and we're going to go ahead and get our paperwork ready for our installer. What we call that is a work order. I'm going to go ahead and open up my job. And go up here to functions and work order pick ticket. This is not only going to tell my installer exactly what's happening on the job as far as what materials are going to be used and what labor needs to be done, it's also going to tell my system that this material is leaving the building. This is your work order screen. And on your work order screen, you're going to notice a few different things. You're going to notice that it's going to give you a brief overview of the job that this is associated with up here. You're going to see a revision button here, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. You'll see that you have an option to attach your eDocs here. So if you have eDocs that are on your job and you want to go ahead and print them out to show your installer maybe, this is where you could go ahead and do that. And then you're going to notice that you have some options here: pre-stage, stage, or ship. If you're in the habit of gathering all of your materials together in your warehouse, maybe putting them in a bundle so that they're ready to go when your installer arrives, the pre-stage and stage options can be really nice for you. If you're using barcoding in your warehouse, there's some really seamless integrations that can help make this process really quick and smooth for you. For this example, I'm just going to say my installer has arrived for the morning and I haven't prepared anything for him. I'm simply ready to come to this ship level, meaning that my material is leaving the building now. And I'm going to go ahead and say I want to ship this entire order. So I'm going to select everything on here, keeping in mind that for something to be work ordered material-wise, it must be in that job costed status, meaning you must have it on hand. If I want to unselect an item, I can simply come over here and double click, and to select it again, I can double click, and you'll see that when it is selected, I do have that Y status in the select column here. If I want to adjust a quantity, maybe I only want to work order part of this, I can right click here and modify my quantity as needed. For this example, I'm going to go ahead and again ship everything out. So I simply need to come down here and hit continue. This is my print preview screen. It's going to give me a rundown of everything that's printing out on my work order. I can adjust my number of copies if I need to. I can adjust some stuff relating to the job if I need to. And again, if I need to translate to a different language, I can go ahead and do that here. We talked about this briefly with installer maintenance. Then I'm going to go ahead and hit print now when everything looks good. And I'm going to get a pop-up saying that this has been created. And this is what that work order will look like. It's going to say work order at the top here. If this is a pre-staged or a staged work order, it will be indicated right here. It's going to give you some information about the job down here. One thing to note is that you'll definitely want to make sure your installers are used to reading this and that they're paying attention to this is the sold to address and this is the job location or the shipped to address. So they definitely want to be looking at this location for where they're going to be doing the work at. I'm going to scroll down here and it's going to list all of my materials, and it's going to be specific with any die lots or roll numbers that are needed here so that I can find this accurately in my warehouse. Then I'm going to come down here and it's going to break down all of my labor items. So my installer knows exactly what needs to be done on this job. If my installer decides they want to do additional work, they would need to contact me and get a work order for that additional work. If I scroll all the way down to the bottom here, there's also a spot for a signature. This can be utilized in a really great way to help you keep communication with your installers open. Again, let's say that an installer decides to do some additional work. They're going to get in touch with you and maybe get you to add it to the job and give an additional work order. Or if, for example, maybe they didn't complete something on the job, they're going to be in touch with you on that. And when they go ahead and put their name and date on this line, it's just stating that everything on this work order is accurate. That way, it again keeps the communication flowing and keeps the installation process very transparent for you. Now that this work order has been printed, I can go into my job and I will see that this status column here has a capital W, meaning that the entire material quantity has been work ordered or has left the building. If you see a small lowercase w here, it means that only part of this material has been work ordered. There are a few options if you have material that comes back and needs to be returned to your warehouse, or if even the entire job comes back and all of the material needs to be returned. To do this, assuming that you are still in this status and haven't invoiced anything yet, you'll come up here into functions and into work order pick ticket. Select your printer. and you'll grab the revision that this was on. I know that I did a couple of different work orders with this job, so I'm going to make sure I have revision 5 selected here by clicking that revision button. And I can see I have the option to select my materials down here. If, let's say, I had one piece of material coming back, maybe this transition piece here, I can click on it, right click, and hit return to stock. And this is just a quantity of 1. But if it was something where I had a larger quantity, I could choose to do a partial return if only some of the material was coming back. Keeping in mind that things that are in box quantities, your system will automatically want to return quantities in full boxes. I'm going to go ahead and hit save for this example. I'm only returning the 1 piece. And yes, I'd like to continue. Now this material has been returned. It's no longer work ordered. If this customer decided that they want this material again, I have the ability to come back in here and rework order it. If I did want to stay in this screen and cancel the entire job, let's say that my installer arrived and the customer wasn't home and decided that they wanted to reschedule this, I can come in here and hit this cancel all button, and it's going to cancel my entire work order so that everything has the ability to be work ordered again when the installation does occur. If I needed to print a new copy of my work order, I can also do it right from this screen by coming to print and reprint work order pick ticket. I'm going to get out of here. And something to note is that this is that transition piece that we returned. So you can see it no longer has that capital W in here. If I do want to go ahead and remove this from the job, I'll want to be sure to unassign it and delete it from here if needed. If you have a lot of jobs that are going on and you want to go ahead and print all of your work orders at one time versus coming in here and printing them out one by one individually, we do have an option for that as well. And that's right here in the sales processing screen. You just come up here to functions and to batch work order processing. And you're actually able to select multiple jobs here and print multiple work orders all at once. And you'll see there's a lot of customization here as far as exactly how you want to print those out, what exactly you want to print out. But this can definitely save you a lot of time if you're printing multiple work orders in a day. Now I'm going to say that the work has all been completed on this job and I'm ready to go ahead and prepare to pay my installer. I can access the installation system from right here in the master menu, or I prefer to do it this way by going into sales processing, order entry maintenance, selecting my printer, and opening up my job. Then from here, I can access the master menu and go into the installation system. When I'm ready to go ahead and approve pay on this job, that's the first step towards paying my installer. What I need to do is come into job labor maintenance / installer payments. This is where we do what we call posting the pay. So you'll post the pay so that when payday comes along, you already know what needs to be paid to your installer. And to go ahead and post the pay, I'm going to open up this job, and you're going to see that the job number is already automatically filled out and my labor lines will appear here. This is why I like to access this screen from the job itself, because my system will automatically fill this out for me. If I were to have accessed this from the original master menu, I would simply have to type in the job number here. Once I have this open, you can see it's going to again list all of my labor lines and give me a brief rundown of the quantity and the rate that I'm paying my installer and who the installer is. When I'm ready to go ahead and approve this or post it, I can do it individually per labor line, or I can do it for the entire job. If I'm doing it one by one, individually, I'll click on the line, right click, and hit add payment. It's going to give me a brief overview of everything that has happened with this installation line. And this comes over from my job. So it's going to tell me that this is done by Bob. If I needed to change this, I could, or maybe I needed to add a second installer who helped Bob with this job. I can do that as well. The work quantity done is going to be filled out here. If for some reason only part of this was complete in time for the pay period, I could actually adjust the quantity manually by typing over here, or I can even go to pay by percent. Maybe I'll say that only 40% of this job was complete in time to be paid on. I could come in here and manually type that in, and my system will do the math for me. For this example, I'm going to say the work was 100% complete. Then I'm going to come and look at the rate here. This is the rate per unit of measure that I'm paying my installer for this. So I'm going to go ahead and say maybe my installer did an exceptional job here, and I'm going to bump up his pay on this job to $11. You can see that my cost is going to figure here. This is my total cost for this labor line. So my 33.33 quantity at $11. is going to equal out to this amount here. You're also going to see that you have a split space here for comments. It's automatically going to generate this comment with your ship to name and address, but if you need to go ahead and edit this comment in any way, you can. I'm going to hit save. And you can tell that a pay has been posted by clicking on this item here and looking down below in this comment section. You'll see all of this information, and if you need to edit or delete this, you can right-click and edit or delete. And this is assuming that this has not actually been paid yet, which will right here say not paid. Once this has actually been paid, this will change the date that the payment was given. Now I'm going to go ahead and approve the rest of these lines here. So to approve the entire job, I would come down and go to Pay All / Multi-Lines. You're going to see that everything is automatically selected other than this top one, which we did individually. If I needed to unselect anything here, I could. And then I can look up here, and again, I can see overall if I need to adjust anything with my installer or with the percentage complete, I can adjust those as needed. For this example, I'm going to say everything looks great, and I'm ready to go ahead and approve the pay. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Add Payment. And it's going to ask me if I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure. And I'm going to come down here and finalize all payments. Then if I exit out and go back to this screen, just like my first line, I can click on any of these items and see down below here in the installer payment summary that this work has been approved or posted. Now that my work has been posted, let's say payday is actually here. And what I want to do is get into my installation system and get ready to cut my installer a check. I'm going to come in from my master menu to installation system. And I'm going to come into installer payable system. Select my printer. And from this screen, I'm going to go ahead and click installer to grab the installer who I'm ready to go ahead and prepare payment for. For this example, I'm going to say Bob. What I'm going to see on this screen here is all of the work that Bob has been approved on for this pay period. So you may see multiple jobs in here if he's done multiple jobs in this pay period that the work has all been approved on. And this pay period is really going to be dependent on how often you pay your installers. You know, it might be every week, it might be every 2 weeks, but you'll see all of the jobs that have been approved that have not been paid appearing on this screen. Now from here, I'm going to go ahead and select them, all of the labor lines that I want to go ahead and pay him on. I can do this one by one, or I can come down here and hit select all. Then I'm going to come up here to print and print payables report. Make sure you're remembering to do this step. I would say this is a step that I often see people forget to do, but make sure you're in your installer payables screen and you're coming up after selecting your labor lines to print payables report. This is going to give you a final rundown of what payment is looking like for them. It's going to give you the total. If you had anything automatically set out to take out for any installer loans or any retainage, it would automatically come up here. But if you needed to manually type anything in, you certainly could. When we talked about workman's comp, liability, and additional licensing or insurance in the installer maintenance, and I mentioned that you may want to include an expiration date, this is an example of exactly why that is. When these things are expired, they're going to flag you right on this screen. It's going to be red and it's going to tell you expired. This way, when you go to pay your installer, you're seeing if there's anything that you need to re-update in your system. Let's say that maybe there is another deduction I want to take out of this installer's pay. Maybe I was unhappy with some work, or maybe this installer is coming back and buying something from me. I could go ahead and put 25 in here. And maybe I want to say I'm deducting $25 because he's buying a t-shirt from me. I can go ahead and do that, and you'll see the deduction is going to calculate, and it will reflect in the total down here. So once everything on this screen looks correct, and I confirm that this is the amount I want to pay my installer, I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. This is going to print out a physical copy of this screen of all of the items that this installer is going to be paid on. I can go ahead and give that to my installer when I pay him, and that way he knows exactly what he's being paid on. When that copy prints out and looks correct, I can go ahead and say, yes, I want to update this as paid, telling my system that I'm paying my installer and this is all correct. Then it's going to go ahead and open up my accounts payable screen. This AP screen is called Open an Item Entry, and you're going to see a rundown of a few things here. It's going to create an invoice number for you and a date, and it's going to, again, know exactly what that amount that you're paying this installer for is. It's automatically going to come into cost of labor for you, or if you have another account set up, it will go ahead and auto-generate to that account. If everything looks good here, I can see that my debits and credits are equal. This is exactly where I want to post this. I can go ahead and hit accept. Add charges to a job. If you choose yes here, this is actually going to go back and add new things into your job. So in this situation, in most situations, you actually want to get in the habit of saying no to this here. No, I do not want to add any additional charges to my job. I've already done that. Select for payment now. If you're going ahead and physically cutting the check right now, you can go ahead and say yes here. Now I'm going to go into my accounts payable by going into my master menu and into accounts payable. Go into my AP reports, number 13, into AP reports 2 of 2, number 14, and go to print checks. If I didn't have my payment automatically selected, saying, do I want to select for payment now? I simply have to go in and select this before I'm ready to print my checks. I want to confirm that the bank I'm using is selected here. I want to confirm that the date of the check is here, and I'll go ahead and hit run. My check has now been printed. I'll confirm that that check looks great. If it does, I'll say that, yes, the check did print okay. And yes, I'm sure. Now, when I go into my job, and I go back up into the master menu and into installation system and job labor maintenance, and I click on those labor items, I can see that these are now marked as paid. And you can see that they're marked as paid with the date that they were paid on. And that completes installer payments.